Everyone is just searching for the fastest way to get good at Valorant. Some players naturally improve a lot faster than others, but if you're watching this guide, chances are it's because you've been struggling to see improvement for a while, and there might be some reasons for that. One of the main things players feel they struggle with in Valorant is their ability to aim effectively in the game, and this is definitely an issue for many players. A game like Valorant can generally be split up into 3 pillars of skill. The first is going to be, as we just mentioned, your aim. Aim is incredibly important, and if you can't aim, you're going to struggle to make the plays that you need to make to win games. However, there are actually 2 more pillars of skill when it comes to the game that are probably just as important. Those pillars are going to be communication and game sense. Both of these pillars are a lot more difficult to improve upon and are going to take active focus on your part to practice. What are the steps to improve each of these pillars though, you ask? Well, for something like aim, it's actually rather simple. All you have to do is click things more. However, for something like communication, for example, it takes a lot of practicing the best ways to communicate with players and learning how you can most quickly and effectively convey a message. Not only that, but one of the big struggles with communication is learning to communicate even when you're not playing well or even enjoying the game. Because a lot of players start to communicate less when they're performing poorly, and that only causes them to play worse because there's less communication going out. Tell me, which lobbies are easier to perform well in? Lobbies where your team is constantly calming and lifting each other up, or lobbies where nobody is saying a word? You'd probably say the first one, and I'd agree with you. This is part of the reason comms are so important. They enable everybody on your team to play better. This is why comms take a lot of active attention during your game to improve, because if you're not used to communicating a lot, your body is going to constantly want to stop, but you have to remind yourself to continue. What about something like game sense though? And furthermore, what does that even mean? Game sense is such a broad term that people just sort of throw around for anything other than aim. Game sense can mean things such as crosshair placement, but it can also mean things such as understanding rotations and defaults. So how do we improve these skills? Well, generally, it's going to be pretty difficult for players to analyze all of the errors in their game sense during a match. So to improve this pillar, you're going to want to actually review your replays and figure out where you went wrong and how you can correct it next time. But to do that can be a daunting task if you've never VOD reviewed before, so don't worry, we're going to teach you what you can look for in your games so that you can VOD review yourself in the future to help you improve your game sense. Having a higher ranked player look at your games can also be helpful, but it's not a necessity. And if you really want to improve, you need to learn how to analyze your game yourself, because chances are you won't always have a Radiant player on standby. However, if you did want to learn from some of our Radiant players over at SkillCapped, then I highly suggest that you check out our hyper improvement system on our website. We recently got a bunch of new Smurf commentaries where Radiant level players will walk you through how to carry as any agent in your ranks, and in fact, we're so confident in our service that we even offer a rank improvement guarantee, meaning that if you don't see the improvement that you're looking for, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. It's like your local gym promising you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered you that, right? Not us. That's how confident that we are that our service works. So what are you waiting for? Be sure to head down to the description below and check out skillcapped.com, but let's get back to the video. Starting out with an aim training routine, there are tons of aim training routines online, and honestly, it really doesn't matter which one you do. What matters is that you have a routine and you stick to it. Aim is largely based on muscle memory, and remember when we talked about your local gym earlier, you're not really going to see much gains if you don't go to the gym multiple times a week. I suggest aim training 30 to 40 minutes before you play a game, and I'm about to tell you the routine I would suggest using based off of what I've heard from a number of pro players. Before I do though, I just want to address the comment that I got on every single one of these videos that I made about aim training routines, and that's this one. King, I want to improve my aim, but I don't have time to aim train. I'm totally understanding of people who don't have the time for something like this, but the other thing you need to keep in mind is that there are players who play Valorant 10 hours a day. If you don't have the time to put in, you're going to improve slower than players who do. I don't want to discourage you though. This doesn't mean that you can't ever be as good as these players, but I do want you to recognize this dynamic. If you're asking this question, you're looking for a shortcut, and there really isn't any shortcuts to this stuff. If your aim sucks now, it's probably going to suck for a while. But if you're consistent with aim training and you play the game, you'll see slow improvement over time. I encourage you to save a few recordings from your games today, and then a year from now, compare your games then to now. You'll see massive improvements, and it's harder to see them in the short term, but if you're looking for a specific aim training routine to do, what I recommend doing is loading up Aim Labs. This is a free aim training app on Steam, and you'll want to sync up your sensitivity to what it is in Valorant so that your muscle memory transfers over. But after you've done that, it doesn't really actually matter so much what playlist you do. What I would do is I would just search up Valorant warm-ups and pick whichever one feels best for you. I know that Ethos and Tens both have one on here. I'm not sure if they made these or if they're fan-made, but they're decent and I've played both of them before. I'd probably spend about 20 to 30 minutes playing through these playlists, and then afterwards you'll want to load into Valorant and go into the practice range. This is a routine I learned from Caboose. He's a pretty cracked player, and this routine is nice for practicing within Valorant itself. What you'll want to do for this routine is track the bot's head in the range and just practice keeping your crosshair on their head while you move, and then practice switching between targets. This may feel sort of boring, but it's really helpful for mouse control and tracking. Then after you do this, let's practice your movement and flicks for a bit. So to do that, you'll practice locking onto a point in the range and strafing while tracking that point, and then you'll counter strafe and flick to a bot's head. You'll do this for a couple of minutes, and then you'll finish off by doing a couple rounds of medium bots with a deagle. This is a pretty decent way to round out your warm-up, and overall this will take you around 25 to 40 minutes. After that, finally what I recommend that you do is load into a deathmatch and run 2 DMs with a deagle only, and then run a few more DMs using a rifle and just going for burst fire headshots on targets. This is a fairly basic warm-up and it'll take a bit of time out of your day, but if you think about it, it'll take about the same amount of time to do this warm-up as it would to play 1 game. So at the end of the day, if you're playing 4 games, you could sacrifice one of those games to properly warm up and actually become a better aimer. This only focuses on one pillar of the game though, so what about communication? Communication is something that is a little bit more difficult to improve. There's not just one routine that you can do and expect your communication to get better, but what I've noticed from professional players in terms of communication is that they're very good at constantly making callouts throughout their matches. So let's make a checklist of what things need to be calmed. Just going down the list, I can think of enemy locations, your utility, what you see, what you don't see, what you're going to do, what you're holding, asking teammates questions when they don't calm, because that's going to happen, they're not going to communicate, predicting enemy utility. This is things like saying, hey, can you shoot the Sova recon when it comes in, or watch out, they're going to flash, and how you want your teammates to play. There's more stuff that you can calm other than that, but you're starting to get the idea. Going off this list, you can basically be calming the entire round. You can see how important communication is in the game, and at the top level, if players aren't calming, it sort of makes you wonder if they even enjoy playing the game. What do you think sounds more fun, playing with this guy?
You can smoke spawn. Play. Stay. Heaven, last one.
Raptors, right?
You got this.
10 seconds left.
Or playing with this guy. I'm tagged by a recon, I'm hiding.
One enemy remaining.
Nice shot. Obviously, you'd rather play with somebody like Shazam. He's just more fun. He's engaging and he's actually interested in what's going on in the game and trying to work with this team. So just to highlight how you would improve your comms in a game, let's take a look at a round from one of our SkillCapped subscribers games that they submitted to us on our new Discord server. Notice how there aren't a lot of comms in this round really at all. The only thing said is at the end of the round when he dies during an engagement and then calls out the damage that he did to the jet. Which is sort of funny because when players do this, it almost feels more like a defense mechanism of, oh, don't worry, I didn't just lose this engagement, I at least hit her. Don't get me wrong, headshotting somebody is a good thing to call out, but it's funny that this is the only thing that is said in the entire round. So now let's go back through and I'm going to record a voiceover of things he could have been calling out throughout the round instead. Hey guys, I'm smoking B spawn so we can push up a little bit more off that. Oh shoot, they're pushing up. Let's try to fight these guys mid. Smoking catwalk. Swinging mid. Good kill. Let's take some space off that. I'm holding market. Sova's droning me for market, guys. I'm going to ult back B site. Let's try to push up. I don't see anyone on site. Let's try to push up. Sova, can you grab the spike and come B instead of running through our spawn?
I have the spike.
Literally nothing on site, guys. I'm going to push spawn and try to look for a pick.
Jet market.
Omen spawn. Jet's out. I lit her 140. Sova, can you please start rotating towards B site? We need you. No, seriously. Look how far out this Sova is right now. Like, what in the world is he doing all of the way over there? This is a lower rated lobby, and that's the answer. And when you literally don't say anything throughout the entire round, this is the stuff that players are going to do. Notice how long Omen was on site before his team actually started to group up to help him, and it's mostly just because he didn't really say anything. He ulted onto the B site without saying a word, and then proceeded to not say anything when he realized it was clear. These are the things that you need to practice in your matches, and this player isn't going to instantly get better when he realizes that his comms are bad. He needs to constantly be reminding himself that he needs to talk during his games. Reminding himself that he can't just tilt and shut down because his teammates are doing weird things. He needs to constantly be helping them out. This is part of your improvement, and it's just as important as aim. You need to be able to communicate effectively if you want to improve. And I'd say that's where 90% of players in this game actually struggle the most. Lastly, though, we need to talk about improving your game sense, because this is also something that takes a bit more active attention to improve. But as Tense says in this clip, VOD review is probably one of the best ways to improve your game sense.
Any advice to improving the game? I'm stuck at DT for so long. I suggest recording your games
and rewatching them and seeing what mistakes you make and try to correct them for future, or like make a mental note of like what to do and what not to do. Thank you, James, for the 3 months. Or you can also pay like coaches and stuff. They'll VOD review your stuff.
Notice how in this clip, Tens is talking about how recording your games and actually going over them is a very necessary part of improving quickly and getting better at solo queue. But what exactly do you look for when doing a VOD review? Because he mentions at the end of the clip, you can get a coach to look through your games for you like we do on the Discord. However, there are only so many coaches out there and there are a bunch of players. So what's the solution? Well, what I recommend is that you learn how to review your own games to an okay level so that you can always have the capability of helping yourself improve. And it's not actually as difficult as you might think, and you don't need to be a Radiant level player to do this. All you need to know is what you're looking for. So let's take a look at the replay again from our Omen friend. This is around a little bit earlier in the game, but that's okay. Right at the start of the round, there's immediately something that we can think about. The first smoke that he places, I want you to answer for me, is this smoke good or bad? Well, to answer that, let's think about what this smoke does. It blocks off anyone from peeking catwalk, it denies the defender's information on if anybody is peeking tiles or not, and it protects our Jett so that she can peek mid just a little bit easier. Does it have any downsides though? It might make it more difficult for us to push towards tree, but aside from that, there aren't too many downsides of this smoke right now. Another question we have to answer is this smoke necessary right now? Because if you take a look at his next smoke, he throws this sucker way into tree, and his team isn't even close to being able to use this smoke. But anyway, going back to the previous question we asked, is this catwalk smoke good? Yes, I would probably say that this is a decent smoke to throw. It denies the enemy team early info on tiles, which is nice because his team isn't pushing tiles, so they don't want them to clearly see that and push up. And it also prevents players from pushing up on catwalk to pressure mid, so this is also nice. The second smoke, as we said, however, is not a good smoke. It's incredibly early, and it's not going to get any value, seeing as the enemies have already pushed through A main and are currently fighting his teammates. And now we recognize that because we were throwing a smoke right here, that wasn't actually valuable at all. We're also noticing that during that time, we could have been helping our team instead. And notice how we're only 8 seconds into the round, but we've already analyzed 3 things that we did and determined if they were good or bad. That's awesome. Next time we're going to remember that we might have a habit of placing smokes a bit too early, and that sometimes we get a little bit too caught up using our utility, and it causes us to leave our teammates hanging. And we also learned that smoking mid can be good, and we should do that more. And we picked up on all of this just by focusing on how we used our utility, but let's keep going in the round. Now that all this stuff has taken place in A main, which remember we had no part in despite being just right around the corner the whole time, we're going to decide to push up. You'll notice right here he's going to use his blind, and just as we did with the smokes, let's pause right here and think about it. Answer yourself this question: is this a good blind? Well, it hits the whole left side of sight, which is cool, but it took us a long time to capitalize on it because we had to throw the blind and then run all the way around. By the time we get in here, the Gen player probably isn't going to be blind anymore, so what can we do to fix this next time? Because obviously we can't run faster. Maybe we could communicate with the Raze and throw the blind while she engages next time so that she can capitalize on it faster. Or maybe we could throw the blind from a different position so that we can move in more quickly ourselves. Overall, to answer the question of if this Omen blind was good or not, I'd say it was okay. It wasn't bad, but it definitely could have been better. But what else do we focus on besides utility? Well, let's focus on gunfights. Gunfights seem important as they're a larger part of the game. Take a look at this first gunfight in the round versus the enemy Omen. His movement seems to be a little rough right here, but I also want to talk a bit about his positioning during this gunfight. Notice how he pathed all the way towards Gen and then realizes the door wasn't closed and has to run back towards the door to close it. I'd also like to point out that part of the reason the smoke expires here is because he used it so early on in the round. But anyway, my takeaway from this fight is 1, probably don't panic spray as much like this, and 2, next time try to think about where you're pathing so that when you enter the site, you don't get caught like this. Because if you're constantly having to backtrack for one reason or another, it's going to result in you getting yourself killed more often. Now, there are still more things that we can break down in this round, so next let's take a look at his post-plant positioning. Where do we go towards once the spike is planted? Our Omen friend seems to go towards Hell, and the question you should ask is this a good position? Well, what does being in Hell actually do? What is your job in this position? Well, Hell doesn't really do a whole lot. Basically, your job is to watch if anybody swings out of tree or drops down from heaven, as those are your only 2 angles. When you're low HP, this sort of feels like a good position to play, but keep in mind you can get spammed through the floor as well. A lot of players love to go and play in Hell, and personally, I don't really love this position, but there are definitely times in which this is the only position you can really go to. I don't particularly hate that he went to this position. However, what I do hate is that while his teammate was taking a gunfight with the enemy Sova from A main, he is spamming bullets through the floor rather than actually just peeking with his teammate. And this is something I just picked up based off the gunfights in the round. I'm just trying to think about his engagements that he took in the round, and this is one engagement he probably could have had, but he never really did because he did something questionable. Notice how in this one round though, we picked out a number of different things to analyze, and none of it was really that crazy. Basically, all we need to do is pick out his utility usage, kills, and deaths throughout the round, and think about, first of all, if those things were good, and second of all, if and or they could have been better. Once you get better at analyzing these sorts of things, you'll also be able to pick up more on team play and even be able to see if your teammates' deaths are somehow your fault, which is a super important skill to be able to pick up on, and this is all part of the improvement process. I recommend at the end of each play session, rather than going straight to bed, try to look through a few rounds in at least one of your games and pick out things that you could have done better. You should basically incorporate all three of these pillars into your routine if you're really looking to improve. Do your aim training routine before every play session, and then focus on your communication during your games. And then afterwards, go through and VOD review your matches, and you will see a massive amount of growth as a player. Let me take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about SkillCapped though. Our 5-division rank up guarantee is something that I highly recommend that you take advantage of. I really wish we had this stuff when I first started picking up games initially, because you're literally learning from the top players in the game how you can improve at no risk. There are tons of Smurf commentaries from actual Radiant level players being uploaded to the website weekly, as well as courses tailored intentionally to push the content that you need into your feed. No, I didn't do that rhyme intentionally, but if you're looking for the best way to improve at Valorant, SkillCapped is the move. Anyway, thank you all for choosing SkillCapped today, and we'll catch you in the next one.